Alright guys, welcome back to another video on FPS Maker. Today we're going to be looking at our first hero that we're going to be converting our stat blocks to, and I'm going to go over the basics for how stats operate and how my stat system works. You can have your own stat system, but I think mine is more organized, allows you to edit it over time. We're going to be editing it over time because I think I need a rehaul on some of my stat sheets. I started working on these characters back in 2016, so it's been about 8 years now since I made my first character. The first character I ever did stats for was Chamelex, as seen here. We're going to be renewing her stats, making them more updated to the modern day, and hopefully through this journey, through I guess maybe the first 100 characters I'll do all of them eventually, but through the first 100 you'll see a common theme, common stat system, and we're going to be updating the stat system over time. Now, for the sake of time, we're not going to focus on energy that much. Energy works basically the same as mana does. Basically, when you use an ability, it takes up your energy. Your energy is a percentage bar in the game. And if you use your abilities, it takes energy. But of course, you can gain back energy by just standing still. Some characters can grant you energy if they have some sort of energy granting ability. Most support heroes passively regen to gain energy back, and some tanks passively regenerate energy anyway. Some characters have infinite energy, as we'll see in the future. For the most part, we're going to be looking at our stat block, and I'm going to be telling you what all of these numbers and what CD means and what DHS, DPS, FR, MAG, CD, and reload means. I'll be showing you all of that. So let's begin by looking at our vertical stat block, and I'm going to tell you what all of this color coding means. So this is what all the color coding is going to be. So right here you can see that this is pink. This box is pink because the role is diversion. As you can see here, I have devised 8 different roles, technically 9, but 8. The 9th role is NA, that's when I don't really know. I've created the character, but I don't know what their role is going to be. Because there's some characters where you don't know if their role is going to be hybrid, aid, or buffer. Because hybrid, well, we'll go over the roles, but hybrid's a very weird one to digest. Another one is aerial. Destroyer is also very weird. It's very weird to determine roles sometimes. You make the character, you have the idea and the story, but you don't know what the character is going to be in the game. But for roles, pretty simple. We'll go over the roles actually right now since I'm talking about them. So, Chamelex is a diversion. The best way to describe roles is to describe the first one and then keep going down. So the attack role is DPS. Character that does damage. Attacks. Goes on the offensive. Offensive attacker. Protector, the blue down here, is a DPS as well, but instead of being offensively attacking, it's defensively attacking. They're on the defense. They're DPS characters on the defense. Shielders, people have shields, defense, turrets, stuff like that. Make walls, structures. They're on the defense. They're defending the objective. Attackers are attacking the objective. Offensive, defensive. Attack is offensive. Protection is defensive. Aid, support characters, people who heal, people who provide shields for other people, people who boost people in different ways. I mentioned how some characters can give other characters energy. Energy is important. You need energy in order to use abilities. There are some characters that grant energy to people, and that is aid. Buffer, the tanks, characters that have a lot of health. Basically just characters that have 400 plus health and have some way to just take a lot of damage and be able to take on more damage than the average person. Diversion. This is where the roles get a little bit hard. Diversion is an attacker or a protector. It can be an attack or a protector, but the main thing is mobility. A diversion knows how to divert people's attention. It flanks around. It moves around really quickly. It can ride around the map, flank around the map. It's just a character that does damage, but does a little bit less damage, has a little bit less health than the average person, but its main secret is mobility. It loves to be mobile. Aerial, very self-explanatory. It's a character that can fly. A character that can fly around the map, can fly, has some use, either through a jetpack or has wings. Most have wings, but some have jetpacks and other mechanical ways to fly. Some have rocket boosters attack, but just a damaged character that flies around. Again, an aerial character can literally be either an attack or protector, just like a diversion can be an offensive or defensive character. An aerial can even be an aid character, but it's just a character that flies around. So that's what I said. Once it gets down to these last three roles, aerial, destroyer, and hybrid, it can be any one of these. It just has a certain kink to it. A diversion can be a protector, but that protector can move around. An aerial can be a protector that flies, a flying shield. A destroyer can be an attack or protector or a buffer. It just is a character that does so much more damage. Think characters in video games that do so much more damage than everybody else that you really want to target those characters because they output so much more damage. They're called destroyers. They can take on multiple people at once, and you have to target them first because they're just going to keep team wiping your entire team every time unless you destroy them. That's the destroyer. Hybrid. Hybrid just means it's a hybrid of two roles. An attack support, an attack tank, a shield tank, a protector and a buffer, an aerial aid. Usually it's a character that both heals and has damage, or a person that heals or provides shields, or a damage character that provides shields. An offensive defensive character is a hybrid. A hybrid just means it has two roles that apply to it. And NA just means it has a role that hasn't been determined yet. Anyway, abilities. So there is color coding here. You can see the color coding here as well. This just means that there's different areas, different type of ability. Trap ability places down like a bear trap and someone gets stuck in it. A sinkhole, a paintball, Home Alone, a Home Alone trap, a barrel trap, a boulder trap similar to Indiana Jones. Just a trap in general. Splash attack, grenades, grenade launcher, exploding orbs. Just a character that just a attack that splashes. Manual, any type of gun. Just a shooting ranged a manual attack is just you press down the button, you hold the trigger, and you fire shots. Sniper shots, minigun, rifle, just a thing that shoots out a bunch of projectiles when you hold it down. Self-healing. Self-healing just means you take out a jug and you self-heal. For Chamelex, she makes a canopy for herself similar to a cocoon for a butterfly. She sits in that canopy and heals herself. Self-healing. Healing. Support heroes have the lighter yellow that symbolizes that they're healing someone. It's a healing ability. Green. Limited area. You launch a magic attack. The magic attacks will usually be a limited area attack. In Ultimate, let's say you're jumping down off a building and creating a crater in the middle of the area. The area of that crater is limited. Poison, an attack that is like fire. It slowly eats away at you. Someone attacks you with a poison, a venom vial, and it slowly eats away your health. Map-wide attacks. Someone converts the entire map into nighttime. Someone changes the day of the map. Someone creates a time stop, stopping everything in the map. Team-wide. Let's say there's an ability that affects every single member of your team that's alive. It would be a team-wide ability. Everybody on your team is affected equally by an ability. Melee. You hit someone. Swords, bows, crossbows, punches, kicking, throwing, biting people. In some cases, if there's like a dinosaur character, which we do have some dinosaur characters coming up. Radial. Every character has a circular radius around them that is somewhat close to them, so something happens. Let's say you have a spear and you spin around. You spin around in that radius. That radius is a circle around you that something happens. Usually passive abilities. Like there's some characters that free anything in their radius is frozen because they're like an ice character, an ice golem. Some characters are hot. They have flames on them. Anybody in their radius gets burnt by the flames coming off their body. Spread. Just a spread. Basically, just full flurry spread ability. You jump down, you dive low, and you release like a lightning bolt, and it spreads in all directions around you in a certain direction. Ability just means that the attack just does something. It doesn't really it doesn't really attack anything. It just, is just an ability. For example, camouflage for Chamelex. She is able to cloak herself, camouflage to a wall. It isn't doing any damage, but it is still an ability. She's camouflaging. It gives her an advantage, and that's why it's just an ability. It doesn't do anything. This is what these X's mean. The X's mean that something is happening that isn't damage. That's why there's X's here. The X's are just taking up space so you don't have just an empty thing. Like, see? This looks weird. It doesn't have anything here. If you put a 0 here, it also looks weird. Why is a 0 over there? But if you put X's here, you know that something is happening that isn't doing damage, but something is definitely happening. And it's camouflage. She's camouflaging against a wall. Something is happening. Natural glider. She can glide from place to place. She's gliding. She's doing something, but it isn't doing damage. It's helping her in the fight, but it isn't doing damage. That's an ability. And the last thing is auto. Auto just means something like a turret, a minion, something that is using AI to fight. Aim assists, auto lock, something that is using auto aim assists to lock onto a target instantly and shoot it. Auto just means that you're instantly locking onto something and damaging it, or healing it in some cases. Basically a turret, turrets auto lock, minions can auto sense and go towards something. There's also auto lock abilities, aim assist, stuff like that. That's what the auto stands for. There's also attack types. Melee, obviously, bows, projectile, should be ranged instead of... Ranged is just like rifles. So melee is usually close up, range means far away, projectile means it uses projectiles, beam, like a laser beam, uses beams instead of projectiles, and astral is just any magical attack. So curses, jinxes, charms, spells, orbs, casts, anything magical is just under the magic attack. Playstyles, we'll get into talking about all of these later. This will take a lot more than just a little bit while, but we'll talk about this more in detail. I guess we could talk about it now. So the first playstyle, area denial, place a lot of stuff on the map, takes up a lot of area. Like, let's say someone puts down a pool of lava. Well, enemies can't go there unless they want to get burned. So it denies a path route to get to the objective for the enemy. It denies area for the enemy to use to its advantage. Linked, the best way to describe this is Mercy from Overwatch. She links her staff to someone and links healing to them. That's basically what the link means. You're basically your attacks are tethered to someone so that they do damage. Usually it's for healing. Like an orb will link to someone to heal them. Mercy's staff links to someone to heal them or links to someone to boost them. It doesn't have to be just healing, but it's just linking to someone, tethering to them. That's what linked means. Splash, we talked about it before. Splash means that you use a lot of splash type abilities. Talked about it. Grenades, magical orbs that splash as well. Fruit can also splash as well. Radial just means that you have a lot of attacks that use the limited area and the radial attacks. You have a lot of radial attacks and abilities. Charger just means that a character that charges in the battle can charge, has a charge ability that can just run in and do some damage. Shielder, someone who has a shield. Shooter, someone who uses a rifle or a type of weapon that shoots stuff, fires, usually guns. I would say just guns in general. Trapper, someone who uses traps. Soaker is someone who can gain a lot of health or has a lot of resistance. They can just basically take a lot of damage, like someone who can heal themselves a lot, has a lot of self-healing abilities that keep themselves alive. That's a soaker, something that can soak in a lot of damage. Sniper, self-explanatory. Mobility, someone who can move around the most. Swordsman, someone who uses a sword. Gunslinger, usually uses some sort of revolver and mobility combination. Avoider, someone who does damage through avoiding people, like placing down a turret and then just going and doing somewhere else. Someone who uses a drone. I would think back to, I forget his name. I think his name is Cryo. I'm blanking on his name, but he's in Apex and he uses a drone that he can use to spy on people. That would be an avoider. His drone does all the work. He just hides somewhere, so he avoids all the action, but he uses the drone to attack people. That would be an avoider. Trickster, someone who tricks around, manipulates people, disables abilities. Think Sombra and Overwatch, just disables their abilities. Revenant, the old Revenant in Apex would shoot a mortar that would disable abilities. Just someone who just tricks around. Is very annoying in general. Burst playstyle is someone who just launches a bunch of attacks or uses the burst fire method on weapons. Launches a bunch of attacks, reloads, launches a bunch of attacks. Burst fire. Dive, someone who jumps into an area, does a lot of damage, and can jump back out. So kind of like the burst, but more based on mobility rather than just firing a bunch of attacks and then having to cool down before firing enough. This is more, they're very interchangeable, but dive I would think is more tank related. Burst could mean just burst fire weapons in general. Flank, people who like to flank around. Defense, places walls, turrets, anything to defend the objective. Fighter, someone who uses melee attacks more often than not. Someone uses their fists, uppercuts, shoulders, headlocks. Someone who uses a lot of melee fighting techniques. Controller is someone who uses minions. Controller just means you put out a bunch of minions. I would think League of Legends for this. Characters who can place like cannons, who can place like archers to do their bidding. Like let's say there's like a goblin robot that puts out a bunch of mini goblin robots to do its bidding. That's a controller. Someone who puts out minions to do their bidding. Supplier. It's like a healer that gives things to people. It supplies them. Let's say there's a character like Johnny Appleseed, who carries around a bag of apples. He gives allies apples in order to heal themselves. People who give shields to allies in order to shield other allies. They're suppliers. Mage, someone who uses magic attacks, pretty self-explanatory. Caster is a good name for it. Finally, Juggernaut. Juggernaut, it means that there's a character that has 4 or more playstyles. Juggernaut just means you have such a diverse amount of attacks and playstyle opportunities that you fit 4 or more playstyles and earn the title of Juggernaut, which means you have 4 or more playstyles, meaning that you're very diverse when it comes to amount of playstyles you can use. So anyway, now that we've spent a good 15 to 20 minutes discussing what all of this means, let's now look at Chamelex. Most of the videos from now on, now that you have all of this knowledge, we'll be doing some review on it at some point. But for the most part, if you can understand what the color coding is, in every single video you'll see this over here, so you'll know what the color coding means. Now you know what the system is going to look like. So now let's convert Chamelex from vertical stat block to horizontal stat block. So first, let's put our hero name, Chamelex, our description, Chameleon Girl. If you don't know where I'm getting the description, look back to here. We have our description below our role and playstyle. Talking about our playstyle, we have flank. We do not have a substyle yet. Later on, we may have one. Chamelex's primary. Chamelex's primary is a spitball. She spits balls of spit out of her mouth, similar to what a chameleon does to protect itself. Chamelex is passive. Passive ability means it doesn't have any cooldowns. This is what CD means, cooldown. Able to slow fall and glide off hills and ledges, just like a chameleon does. It's natural gliding mechanic. So her passive is natural glider. And then we have her abilities. Chamelex's abilities include camouflage. Activate camouflage suit to camouflage to nearby environmental structures. Tongue twister. Tie up an ally for 3 seconds. Similar to Roadhog's hook, it just you tie up an ally with your tongue. She has a very long tongue. She spits it out, ties up an ally so they can't move for a limited time. So tongue twister. I think we mentioned we have side kick. Melee side strike just means you kick someone. You quick kick someone with your foot. Side kick. Wall climb. Most chameleons have sticky feet, so they have sticky appendages, so they can climb up trees. So she has sticky appendages as well, so she can climb up walls using wall climb. Then finally, canopy. Surround yourself in a cocoon-like structure and heal yourself for 150 health. And then we have her HP, which is 200. If you wonder where our HP is, it's right here in this box. 200 HP, 200 HP. And then her ultimate. She only has one ultimate, Flex Sister. Flex Sister combines the word flex and twister. Create a massive flexy tornado that whips up all nearby enemies and structures and throws them out when complete. So just creates a tornado out of flexible material coming from her chameleon-esque glands. Creates a tornado that whips around all near enemy structures and then throws them out when the tornado is over. Alright, so we have all of our abilities. Now, let's get into what these abilities are. So if we look at our stat block, we can see what all these abilities are. So first, our spitballs are manual because you throw them. They're projectiles that are casted out from you. They're not melee because they're not melee items. They're just projectiles. It's a projectile attack that you cast outward into a direction. Natural glider is a ability, a member. Natural glider doesn't do any damage. It's just an ability that helps them move from place to place. It's a passive. It's a passive ability that doesn't do that much. Same thing with camouflage. Doesn't do any damage, doesn't hurt anybody else, doesn't help anybody else. It's just for her. It just gives her an advantage. Now we get into tongue twister. Both tongue twister and sidekick are melee attacks. Sidekick is obviously a melee attack because you're kicking people. Tongue twister is a melee because technically her tongue is an appendage and she's using it to attack someone. She's wrapping someone up with her tongue, which does damage, and it also ties them up. So it is technically an attack that is a melee attack with appendage. Now we look at wall climb. Wall climb is just an ability. It doesn't do any damage, doesn't hurt anybody. It's just an ability. It just helps her move around the map. Canopy is self-healing, as we said before. Self-healing is different than healing. She's healing herself, not healing anybody else. So it's self-healing, not healing. And she heals herself for 150 health. Flex Sister, map wide. Why is it map wide? Well, it could be technically limited area. It is limited area, which is why for our stat block I'm going to place this here because it is limited area. Again, tornado is not a map wide tornado, but it can move around the map. So let's use Hanzo's Dragon for example. Technically, it's limited area because it only happens in a limited space. But Hanzo's Dragon travels the entire map, clipping through walls and everything. So the tornado can move anywhere. You can move the tornado anywhere in the map, and you can soak up anybody you want. So I consider the Flex Sister to be map wide because you can move it wherever you want. And that's why I think it deserves to be called map wide. But let's put this green here just as an optional because technically it could be considered limited area because it only has a limited area of effect. It's not a map wide tornado. It can just move anywhere on the map. And I think that is going to do it for Chamelex and also going through our basic stat sheet and stat system. I think the only thing left to do is to talk about cooldowns. Cooldowns just mean that you can't, when you use camouflage suit, you have to wait 8 seconds after you've used it in order to use it again. Cooldown's a pretty simple concept. Over here in primary, D stands for damage. Base damage is 50. Headshot damage, if it hits an opponent in the head, it does ×2 damage for 100. DPS is how much damage it does per second. This is just damage times fire rate. Fire rate is how many spitballs you shoot out per second. Chamelex shoots out 5 spitballs per finger, 1 for each finger, which is 5 spitballs per second, doing it 250 damage per second, and has 12 spitballs. And her reload just means in order to use the ability again, she has to reload her spitballs on her hands, on both her hands, in order to use the ability again. Why does she have 12? Well, she has 5 for each, she has 1 for each finger, so 10, plus she has a spitball on her palm. So she shoots out from her thumb, finger, 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 and then palm, switches to the other hand, thumb, finger, 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 palm. And then she claps her hands together and licks them both, refilling them with spit and saliva to be converted to balls for her next attack. And that takes 2 seconds to reload. She claps her hand together, lick them, and synthesize spitballs for the next attack. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like if you like, dislike if you don't, subscribe if you like it, and I'll see you guys next time. Toodaloo!